F1 Manager is here and ready to hit the ground running. After a spectacular start, things winded down very quickly around the previous title. But Frontier did not back down from the challenge and finally presents this year's iteration of the series with a truckload of new things to show. Some of them you may have not even seen in the trailers, but is it enough to warrant a new release? Or will we just quickly be at the same point as last year? Stay tuned when we check out all of that and dive headfirst into F1 Manager 23. And with that, welcome back to Overtake. The management world got its newest offspring. With F1 Manager 23, a newly upgraded version of the officially licensed management game of F1 goes on sale this week, with a lot of expectations and hopes laying on its shoulders. Because if we look at the Steam charts for F1 Manager 22, an atypical decline of players is more than apparent. Over 90% of the initial player base is gone after pretty much like 9 months after the release. So we have a steep hill to climb if F1 Manager 23 wants to circumvent these things moving forward. Thankfully, Frontier has found some creative ways to spice up their new release. Firstly, let's talk about the flagship change, the new game mode called Scenarios. It is basically your way of rewriting the history of the 2023 season as it is still happening in real time, with some of the most exciting moments of the current calendar up to be solved. You can choose from a whole heap of struggles to conquer. Some are of urgent nature, while others require you to think almost over a whole race distance. With the added perk, of course, that you always have the real conditions at the time available to you. In the one I played at the start, for example, you redrive Carlos Sainz's Spanish Grand Prix, trying to get him on the podium. You get thrown in at lap 15 and take over Ferrari's decision making from there. Wasn't too hard to do a better job than that, at least. If you want to do a better job at sim racing, this assortment of specialized professionals is at your demand with a small click on the like button, a sub, and a tap on that bell. But let's go to F1 Manager again. These scenarios are extremely cool, especially if you remember them from live TV. I think every one of us, at least at one point, thought, what the hell is this team doing? Well, now we have the chance to right at least some of these wrongs here and there. Of course, they work within the limitations of the game, and some scenarios will oftentimes play out similar, no matter the decisions you make. Nevertheless, the basis of them is fun and works. A scenario creator is not available in the game, but something they could look to add in the future. Aside from that, it is something other than the career to do while playing F1 Manager 23. The lack of playable options was a big point of criticism in the past and may have contributed to the insane decline in player numbers over the months. But now that we talked about it, how did the main attraction of the game turn out? The career is without the shadow of a doubt the meat and bones of F1 Manager 23. And here, not too much major has changed from last year, we have to say. The core elements of last year are still present in the menu, for example. You pick a team, manage the drivers until they grow out of their boots, and maybe scout one or two young talents along the way en route to make Williams the fastest car on the grid. To aid that, they did add simulated F2 and F3 seasons to further increase the realistic growth of prospects alongside your campaign. Although we haven't fully swapped out our drivers for upcoming youngsters, it's still a step into the right direction. Something other management games still have up on F1 Manager is the feeling of finding a hidden gem. Mainly, of course, because the pool of available racers is rather thin. But still, it is cool to see that Frontier addresses that issue. Next step, playable lower division careers and more development drivers. The preparation for race weekends is still the same, with a mix of development for car and drivers alike. Something worth noting is how good the new development of the pit crew felt. Not that it was the biggest change in the world, but last year I often found myself asking, what is the pit crew doing while we work our butt off? Well, since you can now instate a sporting director into your crew, you can also drill certain exercises with your peeps in the pits. Sharpen their pit gun skills, for instance. But be careful, if you overwork them, they may end up costing you more time than otherwise gained. A nice bit of nuance in this previous lacking department in my eyes. What I thought caught my eye most inside the menu was the refocused development of the parts. It's now a lot easier, I feel, to see the pivotal parts for an upcoming race. But even more importantly, these same parts are now adjustable in development. I didn't have a problem with that per se last year. It was very convenient how you pretty much always stayed under the cost cap while developing parts, but truth be told, it wasn't the most realistic happening ever. In F1 Manager 23, you now have the opportunity to manipulate manipulate the outcome of said parts. Either you go for more longevity, which decreases the cost over the season, but also the performance, or you go for parts which may need to be replaced sooner, but will give you that fire start out the gate. It still remains to be seen how close you can really come to violating the cost cap, even if you go full spend mode in the long run. But if it does get more stringent, then good on Frontier. It should be exactly the kind of direction they should be heading in the future, and a good change in my book. Aside from these three really cool improvements, however, you pretty much have the known quantities at your disposal. You work with the drivers the same way as before, and in my opinion, there's still some major parts missing there to close the gap to games like Football Manager, but we'll talk about that later on. Overall, the flow of the career very much feels like a retrain from last year with a few perks added. Arguably, these things should have been in the series from the start, but better late than never. Thankfully, F1 Manager doesn't only happen in the menu, and in other parts of the game, it did make bigger improvements. If we think back to the start of the hype of F1 Manager in 2021, people were astonished at how graphically sound the series was presenting itself, and were excited to see a management game with actually presentable gameplay. It didn't turn out to be a disappointment, but I would say a bit short of the mark. With repetitive radio messages, streamlined gameplay, and predictable crashes that kind of always looked the same, it wasn't quite the blockbuster people expected. This year, however, some of the more nagging issues did get addressed, I feel like. Right off the gate, there are a few more options to direct your driver in the race, whether be it new ERS modes or control menus for the drivers. Initially, I was super happy seeing this and hoped it would make a great bit of difference, and it did in my eyes. Having a bit more handleability of your drivers on track is key, and in this regard even puts F1 Manager ahead of other games in the genre. I was surprised how often I questioned myself while giving instructions to my drivers this time. It definitely felt more meaningful to execute the command. The option to change your fate on track is superb and works as intended often. Thankfully, for the simulation's sake, there are also other factors which do play a part in how true your driver stays to the commands. One is the driver confidence, a new measurement that is supposed to give you an indicator as to how your guys are feeling about their current situation. Being dead last with no communication or way to improve that may leave a sour taste in your driver's mouth, while performing above expectations may give them wings. Other factors which can up the confidence from race start are deep preparation for race day or good practice sessions beforehand. My thing with the confidence is that you cannot really quantify how much it actually contributes to the happenings in the race. If your driver is at least a bit confident, you should be fine, and having him maxed out on it doesn't lead to him beating everyone. There's still a lot of factors which do play a part in your success. It's still most important to get your driver acclimated to the setup and the track. Let them learn the ropes and then bring the most out of them when they step behind the wheel. But now it's at least a bit more interactive, which is the way to go. The only way to go, I would almost say, because to be honest, we do still have an awkward situation at our hands. On the one side, there's a bunch of neat additions to the franchise which will increase the quality of the playing sessions by some, but on the other side, there's still a big part of management gaming missing entirely. One part where F1 Manager 23 did not make any improvements is the social aspect. There's still no relationship to your racers on a personal side, and how your drivers are feeling towards you and the team still doesn't influence anything. If we think about why F1 is so popular nowadays, a major aspect of it is the drama and the personal component, which undoubtedly was pushed by stuff like Drive to Survive. It is what gets people invested in the actual product rather than only the sport. It doesn't mean that the competition should take a lesser role, but not depicting this major part of F1 is a mistake in my opinion. In the household management game, Football Manager, your relationship with the players is a main target to pursue. You can really commit somebody to the project or drive them away. It gives the people in-game a character that is missing completely in F1 Manager 23. Why is there no system that calculates how hot-headed a driver is, for example? This way, you would have to make judgment calls based on that. You may know the right decision to make, but will your driver follow it without saying something? I mean, good luck on telling Max Verstappen to let his teammate by or Lewis Hamilton to stay out on all tires. But in current game state, it is basically a non-issue. If Frontier want to make a real all-encompassing simulation game, then adding this in the future will be paramount. For F1 Manager 23, unfortunately, none of it in sight. I feel like with every new thing that gets added to F1 Manager, we kind of get reminded on the things that it is still lacking. And in terms of long-term playability, only baby steps have been taken. Let's not get this wrong. F1 Manager 23 is a better version of last year's title. When F1 Manager 23 releases on July 21st for PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, and One, and PC, you will have fun with it, if you enjoyed the previous title, of course. Small additions like sprint races, updated commentary, and a few animations add to that, but it is still scary how many of these points we mentioned in that video right there apply. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, cheerio.